My name is Noah Carter. I'm 39 years old. I've been with the FBI for over a decade, and I've seen the worst humanity has to offer: child trafficking rings, political corruption, international smuggling. But nothing, and I mean nothing, ever broke me like the sound of my little girl's body hitting concrete. The scream that followed. It wasn't mine. It was Karen's. That's what haunts me the most. Because when she screamed, it wasn't horror. It was strategy. She called 911. Before I even reached Emily's side, her voice was already trembling, shaking, carefully hysterical. I think my neighbor lost it. Oh my God. I think he pushed his daughter. She told the dispatcher. I snapped. That I screamed at my daughter. That I threw her. She said I'd always been off. That she knew something like this would happen. What she didn't know, I was already recording. And what she really didn't know, I'm not just her neighbor. I'm FBI. Before we go any further, I need you to do something. If you've ever seen someone lie their way into power, if you've ever watched the innocent get crushed while the guilty weep for the camera, subscribe right now. Because this story, you're not going to believe how far she took it, or how I ended it. It started 3 weeks before Emily died. Willow Crest was one of those neighborhoods that felt to clean. Manicured lawns, block parties with store-bought cookies passed off as homemade, and in HOA that fine you for aggressive holiday decorations. That kind of place. Karen lived 3 houses down, mid-40s, Botox to the point where emotion barely cracked her face. She had a white husky named Ghost who barked at everything, and a reputation for reporting suspicious behavior that always involved anyone younger, louder, or browner than her. At first, she left me alone. Maybe it was the clean-cut haircut, the tucked-in shirts. Maybe she assumed I was just another ex-military conservative raising a daughter quietly. After my wife died, Emily was 6, bright, loud, smarter than most of the agents I'd trained with. She loved to sing while drawing, narrated her dreams to me every morning like a podcast, and had a thing for sidewalk chalk art that made strangers stop and smile. She made the cul-de-sac feel like home. Karen didn't like the dot the first time she approached me. It was about Emily's chalk drawings. These colors stained the concrete, she said, tapping her phone screen like she had HOA clauses bookmarked. I'm just letting you know before someone else complains. I didn't say much, just nodded, thanked her, and erased Emily's rainbow sun with a garden hose after my daughter went to bed. I didn't want to make waves, but Karen, she thrived on them. A week later, it was Emily's birthday. We had a few friends over. Nothing crazy. A bubble machine, some paper streamers, and a portable Bluetooth speaker playing Disney songs. Karen came by around 4 p.m. No. Amplified music is allowed after 3 p.m. per HOA guidelines, she said. Also, I saw your daughter throw a cupcake wrapper on the ground, littering as I shut the door mid-sentence. That's when she turned hostile. Notes in the mailbox. Anonymous complaints. A photo of me walking out to grab mail without shoes, with the words unsafe scrawled in red ink. Every time I looked out my window, she was there, watering plants that didn't need watering, walking her dog past our driveway 5 times a day, pretending to be busy. She didn't want peace. She wanted control. Then came the HOA pool party. It was supposed to be a community mixer. Popsicles for the kids, lemonade, lawn chairs, neighbors pretending they liked each other. I stayed on the outer ring of the crowd, sunglasses on, one hand near my hip. Not because I was paranoid, but because instincts don't retire. Emily begged to go in the water. I let her. And then I looked away. For 5 seconds, maybe 6. And when I looked back, she was floating face down. I ran. Every step between me and her felt like molasses. My lungs stopped working. The world muted. I pulled her out. She was light to light. Her lips were blue. And that's when I heard the voice behind me. She was arguing with him earlier. Karen shrieked to a crowd of gasping neighbors. He grabbed her. I saw him push her in. She pulled out her phone, dialed 911. He killed her. She whispered, loud enough for the bystanders. He lost it. I told you something was off about him. As I knelt over my daughter's body, performing CPR, I heard the first siren wail in the distance. Karen put on a show. Tears, hyperventilating, collapsing into Margaret's arms like she was the one who needed help. And when the officers arrived, she didn't point to the pool, she pointed to me. He killed his own child. The paramedics took Emily. I rode in the ambulance with them, never letting go of her hand. The officer followed, but not before taking my name, my license, and a whispered aside from Karen. I could feel the shift already, the suspicion, the narrative, forming before the truth even had a chance. But here's what Karen didn't know. I'm not a regular dad. I'm not a scared man. I'm a federal agent, and I already had her on camera. The moment she dialed 911, the moment she looked around first, then screamed, the moment she smiled, after the paramedic passed by. It was all there. My house is wired with surveillance, front yard, street angle, and a directional mic hidden inside my doorframe picked up every word. Karen set me up. But what she didn't know is, I've set up worse, and I was about to dismantle her entire life, legally, surgically, and with absolute precision. Emily survived, but barely. She spent 2 nights in pediatric ICU, her tiny body hooked to machines, fighting like hell to breathe. The doctors called it accidental submersion. Said if I hadn't started CPR when I did, she wouldn't have made it past the first 5 minutes. But even though she pulled through, the damage was already done because in the eyes of half my neighborhood, I had tried to kill my own daughter. And Karen made sure that by the next morning, her version of the story had already hit the Willow Crest Facebook group. A post titled, "Hard Truths About Poolside Violence from a Concerned Neighbor," described the incident as a domestic breakdown turned dangerous. There were phrases like erratic behavior, explosive temperament, and multiple witnesses who heard shouting. I read it in the hospital cafeteria, coffee untouched in front of me, hands shaking not with fear, but with the kind of rage you only feel when someone tries to write the ending of your story while your child is still in recovery. She was trying to destroy me, and she thought she could get away with it, but she didn't know who I really was. The thing about working undercover for 10 years is, you learn how to disappear while still being right in front of someone. You learn patience. You learn how to build a trap so wide, so clean, that when it closes, your target doesn't even scream, they just blink, stunned, because they never saw it coming. Karen was about to learn what that felt like. But first I needed to bury the father, the victim, the man they expected to panic and beg for forgiveness. I needed to become the agent the morning of the 3rd day. After Emily finally opened her eyes and whispered "Daddy," like it was a secret she wasn't supposed to say, I kissed her forehead, walked out of that hospital, and made 2 calls. The first was to the HOA president, Walt Myers. Walt was a retired history teacher with more spine than he let on. When I asked if we could talk privately, he agreed instantly. We met at the golf course clubhouse, where he was supposed to have breakfast with his wife. I didn't waste time. I laid out the timeline, the pool party, Karen's 911 call, her accusation, and then I showed him the video from my front yard camera, angled perfectly toward the community pool entrance. Karen walking past my house at 3:17 p.m., holding her phone, talking into it, not screaming, not frantic, calm, rehearsed. She paused before turning the corner into the pool area, looked around, and smiled. That's unsettling, Walt said, eyes glued to the screen. I need HOA security cam footage, I told him. You've got a camera facing the pool, right? He nodded, motion triggered. But yeah, we don't keep footage long. Then I need it today. He gave it to me without a single question. The second call was to my bureau contact, Agent Delaney. Delaney had been my handler for years before I transferred to field ops. She was blunt, smart, and deeply loyal. Do you want me to pull strings? She asked after I explained everything. No, I said, not yet. I want to do this clean. Local. You're sure? I want her charged properly. Obstruction. False report. Possibly child endangerment. But I want it airtight. No favors. I don't want this dismissed on a technicality. I want it to stick. Delaney whistled low. She messed with the wrong dad. You have no idea. I spent the rest of the day building the case like I'd built hundreds before, only this time the stakes weren't national security or cartel takedowns. They were personal. I cross-referenced Karen's complaints filed with the HOA, and the past year, there were 47 of them. 47 against 15 different families. She had a pattern: accuse, escalate, then play victim. She didn't just weaponize policy. She curated it. Her favorite tools: noise complaints, child supervision, accusations. and calls to 911 that conveniently never resulted in police action, but always made their way into HOA discussions. I compiled everything, filed copies, dated timelines. Then I called Officer Ramirez. Ramirez was one of the responding officers that day. Young guy, straightforward. I'd seen him once before when a neighbor's car got broken into, and he handled it well. We met at a diner. I slid a flash drive across the table. Body cam footage from your unit, Karen's 911 call, my home surveillance, HOA pool cam. He plugged it into his laptop and watched. 10 minutes in, he looked up. She lied. She framed me. He nodded slowly. I'll take this to the chief. We'll have to re-interview everyone. But yeah, this is solid. I'll testify. I'll go public if needed. You won't have to, he said. This is enough to open a case for filing a false police report, and depending on what the DA sees, maybe more. It was finally happening. The rope Karen used to hang others with. She was now dangling from it. But like every good predator, she sensed something shift. Because the next day, she showed up on my porch. I opened the door slowly, phone already recording in my back pocket. Karen was wearing a cardigan, to sizes too big, no makeup, eyes watery. I just wanted to check on you, she said softly. I didn't say a word. And Emily, she added quickly, she's okay, right? I was so shaken. I barely slept. I hope you know I only said what I saw. I panicked. You told them I killed my child, I said flatly. She flinched. You were so fast, and I heard shouting. And you lied. I panicked, she repeated. I stepped outside, letting the door swing shut behind me. We were standing 3 feet apart, on the same porch where she had once handed me a printed HOA bylaw about sidewalk chalk. Do you know what I do for a living, Karen? She blinked. I work for the FBI. Her face twitched. You filed a false police report. You attempted to manipulate a death investigation. And you tried to assassinate my character publicly. On record, Karen started to speak, but I held up a finger. No more lies. You'll be hearing from the police soon. I'd suggest getting a lawyer. She opened her mouth again. Her voice trembled. You can't threaten me. This isn't a threat, I said. This is a professional courtesy. I turned and walked back inside. Karen didn't knock again. But the damage was already done, because by Friday, she had posted another message on the neighborhood group. This time, she painted herself as a victim of harassment, claimed I was dangerous, that I'd intimidated her on her own property, and even accused me of covert surveillance. She called me the federal stalker, and it got worse. A neighbor, Todd, mid-50s, drank in his garage. Never liked anyone under 40, commented. I always knew the guy was a Fed. Creepy how quiet he is. Karen replied, he's watching. All of us. She had started a new narrative. Not that I was a violent father. Now I was a threat to everyone, and some of them started to believe her. That's when I realized this wasn't just about clearing my name. This was about making sure Karen never did this again. Not to me, not to anyone. And for that, I had to go all in. Because the investigation wasn't over. It was just beginning. 3 days after Karen's neighborhood post accusing me of being a federal stalker, I got a notice taped to my front door. A formal letter from the HOA board, signed by President Walt Myers, the same man I'd met at the golf clubhouse, the one who handed me the pool footage without hesitation. I opened the letter at the kitchen table with one hand, while the other poured cereal for Emily. She was home now, bruised but healing. She still had trouble sleeping, and she flinched every time she saw our neighbor's white husky walk past the window. I told her the truth in the gentlest words I could. The woman across the street said some wrong things about Daddy, but we're fixing it. Now I read the words on the page in front of me. Dear Mr. Carter, due to recent allegations raised by a fellow resident and a growing concern within the community, the HOA board is requesting your voluntary suspension from all community events and facilities pending further review of your behavior. I didn't even finish the paragraph. Voluntary suspension? They were asking me to isolate myself based on nothing but Karen's whisper campaign. I picked up my phone and called Walt. I didn't write it, he said the moment he answered. That wording came from Margaret and the 2 new board members she roped in. She's turning them. I said, they're scared. She's convincing people you've got surveillance on every home, that you're building dossiers. She's not wrong about that, I said coldly. I have files, evidence, proof of her lies. Would you like to see the next drive? There was silence. Walt, I continued, I'm giving this 24 more hours. After that, I take it above HOA, above county, and I make it federal. He swallowed. Okay, do what you need to do. I hung up. Karen was escalating faster than I expected. She had learned not to fight me directly, not since I confronted her on the porch. Instead, she pivoted to the one thing she always had control over: perception. And in a neighborhood like Willow Crest, perception was reality. She printed flyers again, new ones. This time not anonymous. They were signed in cursive with her name at the bottom. A bold move. The flyer warned of surveillance vans, covert watchers, and possible intimidation tactics by a federal employee living in our community. She included a grainy photo of me, taken, I assume, from across the street, standing in my garage at night with the door open. The caption read, "This is what power looks like when left unchecked." I found 3 of those flyers tucked under my windshield. Emily found one in the mailbox, crumpled and stuffed between a coupon book and a grocery store ad. She handed it to me and asked, "Daddy, why do they say you're scary?" That's when I snapped. I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I was going to break her. I called Ramirez again. I want to move forward, I told him. I have surveillance, timestamps, printed libel, malicious false reporting, and now, community-wide harassment. He hesitated. We're ready to press on the false police report, but for the harassment angle, we need to establish a pattern of intent. I've got that, and more. We met at the precinct that evening. I arrived with 2 flash drives and a stack of organized documents. The first drive included Karen's 911 call audio, my front yard surveillance HOA pool footage video of Karen walking calmly to the pool before the incident. The second drive contained digital copies of all her public posts, the flyers, text messages from neighbors confirming she had handed out printed material, and discussed watching me a transcript from her HOA complaint log over the past 12 months. When Ramirez finished reviewing it all, he sat back and whistled. "It's enough." "For what?" I asked. "Filing a criminal complaint for defamation and false public reporting," he said, "and likely obstruction, if we can prove she intended to derail the original investigation." She knew what she was doing, I said. She's done it to others. I just have the platform to fight back. He nodded. We'll prep the case file and send it to the district attorney. It's gonna take a few days, but you'll hear from us soon. I left the precinct that night with a strange calm inside me. Not peace, just clarity. Karen had tried to weaponize grief. Now I was weaponizing justice. But Karen wasn't done yet. The weekend, she threw a community safety BBQ in her front yard. She set up folding chairs, strung up red, white, and blue bunting, and grilled cheap hot dogs while standing next to a sign that read, "Keep our streets safe from surveillance." I watched from my window. Neighbors wandered over. Some smiled politely. Some stayed. A few glanced at my house like it was radioactive. Then Karen did something I didn't expect. She introduced herself as community watch liaison. That's not a real position. She made it up. She handed out clipboards asking residents to write anonymous concerns about their neighbors. The language was vague, full of phrases like suspicious behavior, increased aggression, and questionable affiliations. When I walked outside to take out the trash, she raised her voice mid-conversation and said, "We just want to make sure everyone is safe, even if some people don't like being watched." A few people turned to look at me. Most turned away quickly. I didn't say a word. Instead, I walked back inside and opened a secure laptop that hadn't been used in months. If Karen wanted to pretend this was a war, I'd treat it like one. I submitted a formal report to the Bureau, a documented complaint of local harassment and defamation against a federal agent by a civilian. I included Ramirez's contact, the incident report, and the surveillance evidence. I marked it level 2, escalating civil conflict with federal implications. 2 days later, I got a call from Internal Affairs. They weren't investigating me. They were assigning me to investigate her undercover. Locally embedded harassment from a civilian toward a federal officer was rare, but it wasn't unheard of. And now, it was official. Karen wasn't dealing with a grieving father anymore. She was dealing with an agent, a sanctioned, documented, activated agent. But that also meant the gloves had to stay off. Every move needed to be clean. Every word measured. Every outcome backed by fact. The next phase wasn't revenge. It was reconstruction. I was going to restore the truth, brick by brick. And when I was done, Karen's name would be on every public record I could file, under every category that mattered: false report, defamation, harassment, civil interference, and maybe, just maybe, child endangerment. The first official move came through my bureau email, encrypted, as always, subject line, Carter. Local threat file, active. Inside was a standard case code, a field operations approval no, and a single directive: proceed with investigative discretion, collect community statements, no public bureau disclosure, keep federal involvement classified unless escalated. Perfect. That was exactly what I wanted. I didn't need sirens. I didn't need headlines. I just needed access. And now I had it, fully sanctioned. The same systems I'd used to crack international cyber rings and political fraud networks. I was about to aim them at a woman who decided that HOA power made her untouchable. And she still had no idea who she was actually messing with. My first move was subtle. I began knocking on doors, not with a badge, not with a warning, with a clipboard and a simple line. Hey, I'm gathering statements regarding the pool incident a few weeks ago, hoping to understand how people experienced it. Anything you saw, heard, or believed afterward. At first, most neighbors hesitated. The fear Karen planted in their minds about me, about surveillance, about dark government connections, was still there, curled in the corners of their uncertainty. But then they spoke. Todd, the guy who called me creepy, he admitted he never actually saw anything. Honestly, man, I just didn't want her targeting me. She came over with this whole story, and it sounded intense. I didn't think it'd go this far. Margaret was more cagey, but even she eventually admitted Karen may have dramatized a few details. Karen told the police I threw my child into a pool. That's not dramatizing. That's a calculated lie. One by one, I collected enough statements to establish two things. Karen had coordinated a false narrative. Several neighbors had been influenced or pressured to support it out of fear or manipulation. Next, I filed a records request through a state portal. Karen didn't have a criminal record, but she did have a trail. 3 civil harassment complaints filed against her in the last 7 years, all dismissed or settled to involve neighbors. One involved a school staff member. It was a pattern. Karen got close, found a weakness, created drama, then blamed others for the fire she started. Now, she was lighting the final match because that week, the police officially filed a notice of intent to pursue charges for filing a false police report. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in. That weekend, she posted another video to the Willow Crest private Facebook group. This one shaky, filmed vertically, full-on breathless panic energy. She looked straight into the camera and said, I am being stalked by my neighbor. I fear for my life. I can't sleep. I'm documenting everything in case I disappear. Classic Karen. It got 42 reactions. Half were concerned, half were laughing emojis, and one comment under it said, I've lived next to Noah for 3 years. Never heard a raised voice. Just a dad and his kid. Karen, maybe take a breath. She deleted the comment within minutes, but the cracks were showing because something unexpected was happening. People were turning slowly, quietly. Neighbors started texting me little things. She's been walking by my house 5 times a day. She asked if I'd seen you in a rageful mood recently. She said you were flagged by Homeland Security. Is that true? I told them the same thing every time. I can't talk about details yet, but the truth's coming out. And it was because on Tuesday morning, Karen was served, officially, with a notice from the district attorney's office. 1 count of filing a false police report, trial scheduled in 3 weeks. I watched from across the street as she opened the envelope on her porch. Her hand trembled. She looked up, scanning the neighborhood. Then she looked at my house. And froze. She finally knew. She finally understood. I wasn't a guy she could steamroll. I wasn't a scared parent with no options. I was a federal agent, quiet, patient, thorough, and I had let her build her fantasy just long enough to trap herself inside it. But this wasn't the end. Because Karen didn't react the way a normal person would. She didn't apologize. Didn't panic. She doubled down. She started posting cryptic quotes. They fear the truth. The bigger the lie, the more they hide. I will not be silenced. Then came the packages. Yes. Packages. I received 3 in 1 week, no return address. Each one contained something strange. The first had a burned copy of George Orwell's 1984, with every page underlined in red. The second was a bag of shredded pink flamingos, the same kind used on our infamous lawn decorations years ago. The third, a USB drive, unlabeled. No note. I didn't plug it in. I sent it to the Bureau's cyber team. They called me back within hours. Know what? You're not going to believe what's on this. Try me. It's a folder titled HOA Justice Initiative. Inside, hundreds of audio clips, Karen's voice, phone calls, rants, meetings, some from years ago. She recorded everyone, even herself. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just delusional. She was building a library. She wasn't just trying to destroy me. She was trying to create her own alternate reality. One where she was always right, always the victim, always the one under siege. The USB drive was a weapon, but in her hands, it was just more proof. In mine, it was the nail in her coffin. Because what she didn't realize was that half those clips were illegal. Secret recordings, no consent, conversations inside HOA meetings, private chats, even one that sounded like it was recorded at a therapy session. The DA's office took immediate interest. They added a second charge, violation of state wiretapping laws, and suddenly, Karen was looking at real consequences, not just fines, not just probation, jail time. Still, I didn't celebrate, because I knew her kind. Karen wouldn't go quietly. She had one more play left, and she was going to use it the night before her arraignment. I caught her outside my house, 2:13 a.m. I saw her through the living room window. She wasn't moving, just standing there on the sidewalk, staring. In her hand, a single white envelope. She walked up to my front porch and slipped it into the mailbox. Then she turned and walked away, into the dark. I waited 10 minutes before I opened it. Inside was a photo of Emily, taken the day of the pool party, and written on the back in block letters, "This never happened." I stared at the photo for a long time. It was Emily, smiling in her pink swimsuit with her favorite unicorn towel wrapped around her shoulders. Taken from behind the pool fence, without my knowledge, without hers. It was a stolen moment, made grotesque by the fact that Karen had held onto it, that she had printed it, that she chose the picture to deliver a message. This never happened. A denial, a threat, a warning, maybe all three. I sat down at the kitchen table, lit only by the hallway glow, and laid the photo flat. Emily's smile looked back at me, innocent and untouched by the nightmare that had followed. I didn't want her to know any of it, not the lies, not the fear, not the war building around her life like a fire line. But now it was personal in a way even I hadn't prepared for. By 6 a.m., I had the entire situation forwarded to Internal Affairs and the Bureau's legal division. Karen had just crossed from delusional neighborhood threat into child-targeting stalker. There was no more room for interpretation. She had inserted herself into my family's trauma, physically, digitally, emotionally. I forwarded the envelope and the photo to the Bureau's Threat Assessment Unit. They pinged the printer serial watermark embedded in the bottom corner of the photo, the kind that most people don't even know exists. It matched a Canon model registered under Karen's name, purchased at a Best Buy for months ago. She wasn't even being subtle anymore. The DA's office was looped in immediately. The charges were updated to include stalking, criminal harassment, intent to intimidate a witness. In an active legal proceeding, she had no idea how deep she'd gone that day. I kept Emily home from school. We spent the day in the backyard painting rocks, planting seeds, anything that felt like life. I told her only what she needed to know. Some people try to hurt others because they're scared. But you and I, we tell the truth, and we protect each other. She nodded, like superheroes. She asked, "Exactly." I said, and for a few hours, I let the rest of the world burn without me. But Karen wasn't done burning. The night before her arraignment, she released a full YouTube video. It wasn't posted on the Willow Crest group. It wasn't even listed under her name. It was uploaded from a burner account, Truth Watcher 1991. The video was titled, "How to Survive When Your Neighbor Works for the Deep State." I was the neighbor. She had gone full conspiracy. The video opened with footage of my front yard, slowed down, distorted with dramatic music. Karen narrated the entire 10-minute clip in a trembling voice, describing her months of fear, her unrelenting surveillance, and her belief that I was planted in the neighborhood to suppress citizen movements. She said Emily was part of the act. She said the drowning incident was faked. She said the hospital visit was scripted. That was the moment I stopped the video and walked out of the room. Not because it hurt, but because rage that hot requires air, space, silence. If I stayed inside the moment, I'd lose my grip on the one thing Karen didn't have: control. I reported the video, so did half the neighborhood, but not before it hit 18,000 views. By morning, it was taken down, but the damage was done because some people believed it. A journalist from an online alternative news site reached out to me. We're looking into claims that a federal agent staged a drowning to silence a civilian. Would you like to comment before the story goes live? I said nothing. I didn't have to, because at 9:14 a.m. the next day, Karen was arrested in her driveway. It wasn't loud, no lights, no cuffs thrown over the hood, just a quiet walk to the cruiser while two detectives read her the charges. A few neighbors watched. One filmed it on their phone, and that footage, the real footage, hit 100K views by the end of the day. The video title, HOA Karen Arrested After Blaming FBI Neighbor for Her Lies. That was the beginning of the end. Karen made bail, of course. She always had savings, from what no one really knew. She came home that night with her head down, no fireworks, no waving binder. But something in her had cracked, because she stopped posting, stopped walking ghost, stopped playing the victim in public. But she never apologized. Not once. The trial date was set. The prosecution had a rock-solid case, multiple videos, timestamps, sworn neighbor statements, audio recordings, and now, a printed threat involving a child. Still, I kept one more move in my back pocket, one final piece of evidence. A recorded conversation. 3 weeks before the pool incident, Karen had stood in the street in front of Margaret's house, talking about me. My surveillance camera picked it up. You know what she said. "I don't trust the guy. Always so calm. It's creepy. I wouldn't be surprised if he just snapped one day. People like that, they're the most dangerous." She wanted it to happen. She predicted it. Fantasized about it. And when Emily nearly drowned, she didn't panic. She pounced. That recording was submitted into evidence the day before trial. The prosecution smiled when they heard it. The jury didn't even flinch. Karen's defense team argued emotional instability, stress, a misguided attempt to protect a child. But the truth was undeniable. The charges stuck. Guilty on all counts. She received 18 months probation, 120 hours of community service, mandatory psychological evaluation, and a restraining order that kept her 500 feet from me and Emily, permanently. She moved out of Willow Crest a month later. No goodbye, no statement. Just a for sale sign and a moving truck. And yet, 3 weeks ago, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just one sentence inside. The truth never sleeps. I knew it was from her the moment I unfolded the letter. No signature. No handwriting that could be matched. Just one sentence in block print, typed in 14-point Times New Roman. The truth never sleeps. The phrasing, the dramatics, the need for one final word. It was her, even if she hadn't mailed it herself. Maybe she had a friend do it. Maybe she dropped it in a mailbox across the city. Either way, the message was clear. Karen still believed she was right. She didn't think she lost. She thought the system failed her. That justice was an illusion built by the people who didn't listen to her screaming. And in her twisted view of the world, she was still the victim, and I was still the threat. I didn't tell Emily about the letter. She'd come too far. Her therapy sessions were working. The night terrors had faded. She smiled again, the kind of real smile that kids don't fake. She even asked if she could go back to swim lessons. I said yes, but I didn't take my eyes off the street, not once. Because Karen may have been legally restricted, but people like her don't follow rules. They'd twist them, weaponize them, and while the court silenced her with a restraining order, it didn't erase the way she worked, in whispers, implanted doubt, implausible deniability. I kept everything. Every letter, every screenshot, every surveillance clip. And I built a private archive called the Karen file. Just in case she came back. But then something else happened. Something I hadn't anticipated. Another neighbor came to my door. Her name was Tessa. Mid-30s, lived a streets over. I barely knew her, aside from a wave here and there at the mailbox or community BBQ. She looked nervous. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. I stepped outside. Tessa took a breath. "I know it's over, legally. But I thought you should." "No." Karen reached out to me. My jaw tightened. "When?" "Last week, through Instagram. A new account." She asked if I still believed the lies. Said she had documents. That she wanted to meet off record. She's trying to rebuild her narrative. Tessa nodded. I didn't respond. I blocked her. "But I just thought you should know." "Thank you," I said, seriously. But inside, I was already moving. I filed the incident with the Bureau's harassment monitoring unit. They flagged Karen's new account and linked it to 2 other sock puppet profiles. All of them shared one common activity: private messages to Willowcrest residents. Subtle suggestions that she had been framed, that she was silenced, that I had planted everything. One message read, "If you only knew what he's capable of, you'd lock your doors to." She was still trying to erode the edges. One comment at a time. I held off on pressing new charges. She hadn't technically violated the restraining order unless she contacted me directly. But I documented everything, and I warned the neighborhood. The post I made on the community page was simple: if Karen or anyone tied to her reaches out, report it. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not being watched. She just wants you to think you are. The comments exploded. That's when the stories started pouring in. A neighbor 3 streets away said Karen once accused her daughter of dripping demonic energy after a Halloween decoration went up. Another said she caught Karen photographing her backyard during a kid's birthday party. Someone else had video footage of Karen digging through their recycling bin in the middle of the night. It didn't take long before I realized Karen hadn't just tried to ruin me. She had been waging war on this community for years. I compiled it all: statements, clips, testimonies, and sent it to the HOA board. They held an emergency meeting. This time, it wasn't just about me. It was about everyone. Walt, the HOA president, looked exhausted. "We failed to act earlier," he said, "but we won't ignore it anymore." They voted to pursue a permanent ban. Karen would never again be allowed to own property or reside within Willowcrest boundaries. A clause built into the HOA's revised bylaws that allowed for legal expulsion based on criminal conviction and community harassment. It passed unanimously. Karen was officially blacklisted. A few weeks later, her house sold. The new owners were a young couple, teachers, quiet, polite, thrilled to join a wholesome community. When they asked about the previous owner, Walt just smiled and said, "She moved on." But I knew better. I checked her social media once a week, just to be sure. Every time, the accounts were gone. The new ones would appear each time with less activity, fewer followers, less engagement. Her voice was fading. Her platform was collapsing. And I thought that would be the end. But then, one night, Emily came into my room, holding her tablet. "Daddy," she whispered, "this lady keeps messaging me." I sat up instantly. "What lady?" She showed me the screen. A friend request from a blank account, the username at Truth Never Rests 91 block. Reported. Trace. The Bureau tracked the IP address. It wasn't Karen, but it was registered to a shared device at a local library 20 miles away. A library where Karen had been seen last month. She wasn't messaging Emily directly. She was testing the waters, seeing if the firewall held. She was probing the edges of her ban. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for her to slip again. I was going to close the file, not just with the law, not just with the HOA, but permanently. I filed my final report the next morning. It was short, no emotion, just facts. Subject: Karen Elizabeth W. Status: repeated violations of restraining order, continued community harassment through proxy accounts, and potential digital contact with a minor. I sent it to the Bureau, the DA, and the local precinct. I attached the screenshots, the IP trace, and the timeline. I didn't make a request. I didn't ask for action. I just left it there, clean, precise, undeniable. By evening, they responded. The DA moved to petition the court for an emergency hearing. Probation violation, restraining order breach, digital stalking. They'd had enough, and so had I. But something strange happened at night. Karen disappeared. No new accounts. No news sightings. No notes, no letters, nothing. Like she'd felt the final hammer drop and finally realized it was over. I wanted to believe that was it. That she had burned out the last fumes of her obsession and moved on. That justice had cornered her and the reality of her own destruction finally settled into her skin. For the first time in months, I let my guard down. Emily and I celebrated with ice cream on the porch. She told me about a dream she had. She was flying, and I was down below with a walkie-talkie saying, "You got this, rookie." And she was laughing, and she wasn't scared. The dream felt like healing. She fell asleep on my chest. I carried her inside and promised myself, one last time, that this chapter was closed. But the thing about people like Karen, they never want closure. They want the final word, the last breath, the last scar. 2 days later, the doorbell rang at 5:47 a.m. Not a knock. Not pounding. Just a single ring. I opened the door cautiously, firearm holstered, instincts high. But no one was there. Only a package. No return label. No markings. Inside, a journal. The first page read, "For Emily, so she knows the truth." It was Karen's handwriting. 200 pages of unhinged conspiracy, rants, diagrams, accusations, doodles, references to me as the architect, pages about surveillance dreams, empathic interference, and a section titled "What Really Happened at the Pool." I didn't show it to Emily. I turned it in. This time, the judge didn't hesitate. Karen's probation was revoked. An immediate warrant issued. She was arrested 36 hours later at a bus station with the second volume of the same journal in her bag, addressed to someone else's child in a different county. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. No bail. No alternative programs. No more emotional defense. 3 years. That was it. That was the end. I kept the file, the real file, locked in my safe. Not because I needed to look at it, but because someday, when Emily is old enough to understand, I want her to know what happened. I want her to know the truth. That her father didn't just protect her. He dismantled the person who tried to steal her peace. One document, one witness, one lie at a time. Karen's name no longer echoes through our neighborhood. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind hits the mailbox just right, I swear I still hear it creak. Not from fear, not from paranoia. From memory. A reminder of what happens when someone pushes too far, plays too dirty, and forgets that some neighbors don't just mow lawns and wave hello. Some neighbors wear badges, and some never stop watching. But tell me this. If someone tried to destroy your life from the inside out, if they came for your family and used your child as a weapon, what would you do? Because now you know what I did. Hit subscribe if you believe the truth should always win, even when it's silent.